Good evening, people of the internet. You are watching The Sweat, and if you're enjoying Jesse's fresh new facial hair, you're not alone.
Yeah, well, today you can call me Tyler Sullivan, and playing the role as that guy, well, that's you, Emerson.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be here. In leading role, might I add.
Oh, wow. Well,
okay, let's go ahead and just kick things off a little Thursday night football action and welcome in DK Live's Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. Hello, you two.
Hi.
Jeff, I missed you.
That wasn't awkward
I did
at
not
all.
miss you, Reed.
There he is.
Well, there you go.
He's back. He is back.
I love it. All right, boys, let's get into some of your picks for this NFC East showdown between the Eagles and Giants, and let's start under center. Which QB are we feeling more, Carson Wentz or the cheaper option in Eli Manning? Reed, start us off.
I'm going budget here. I'm going really down the barrel with Eli Manning at 9,800. Look, he has not been good at all this year. Check down Charlie. He has a career completion percentage, obviously, because he's only throwing to his running backs. And Saquon is fine here, but if you look at what he's done against the Eagles at home, 9 touchdowns, 26 DK fantasy points, and the Eagles are 10th best for opposing quarterbacks. Their defense is not the same as last year. I think if you want to save and get Saquon, get some of these higher priced guys like OBJ, save it with Eli.
All right, Jeff, you feel that same way, or are we going with Wentz here?
You know, you look at the Giants' defense, and they've actually been pretty good at stopping the pass. Like, they're not that bad a unit. I mean, they've been terrible at limiting running backs, but opposing quarterbacks haven't thrown for 300 yards against them, outside of the Deshaun Watson game. But, I mean, that's Deshaun Watson. He's thrown for 350 against everyone right now. So I think I'd have to lean Eli here, too. I mean, the Giants' offense hasn't been pretty, but he's been pretty consistent as far as, like, completing passes go. And it really comes down to matchup, too. I mean, the Eagles' secondary is terrible. They're great at stopping the run, great at limiting the running back position, but they're not really getting pressure on the quarterback, and they're allowing a ton of passes, outside to the wide receivers, which is where the Giants have strengths. So I have to go with Eli here. I think ultimately you want exposure to Wentz, too, because he's a running quarterback. He'd easily, run for a touchdown here. But if I had to choose in one lineup, I'd probably just go Eli.
Oh, well, good stuff there. I mean, Odell Beckham and Lil Wayne might not agree, but, that's for each to his own. I mean, this is DFS, not real-life football. But actually, speaking of Odell Beckham, he was a stud last week against Carolina, catching touchdowns, throwing bombs, taking names. But is he a must-draft tonight for this game, Jeff?
It's pretty hard not to have some Odell Beckham exposure in this matchup. I mean, I'm not going to go over how bad the Eagles secondary has been, but they're just awful. They really are. I mean, they're giving up a ton of points to wide receivers every week, and we saw 2 elite wide receivers go bananas against them last year. I mean, it could have been a lot worse that game too, right? So, Steph Diggs didn't get into the end zone, and they kind of didn't have to pass as much late, but they were just taking the Eagles' corners to school. And I expect Odell Beckham to do the same thing here. He had a couple really big games against the Eagles last year. There's just no reason to avoid this situation. Odell got on track last week. I think he's going to stay on track this week. Maybe you don't fit him in your captain's position if you're doing the showdown slate. Maybe you go with Sterling Shepard or another value option on the Eagles, but you got to get some exposure. You got to use Odell this week, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting strategy. Reed, do you feel the same way? Maybe you don't put him in the captain spot, but you still get exposure. What are you thinking?
I think you can put him in the captain spot if you want to. I mean, this guy is going to absolutely destroy. He's in a boom position here. He gets Jalen Mills. He's the number 99th ranked cornerback, according to PFF, and he just gives up big games. There are a couple guys out there like a Buster Screen and Jalen Mills, who you always go up against. He's getting criticized. Doug Peterson and Schwartz have said that they're going to stick with him, but for how long? OBJ hasn't necessarily done well. Yes, he was in a good spot, and he produced last week, but now you get a secondary that's really banged up. You get that defense, like Jeff was saying, that funnels everything really down to the bottom area, and their run defense is really good, and also their tight end defense. So when you look at their secondary, whoever Jalen Mills is guarding, and that's most likely going to be OBJ, you want to attack that. In the last games that OBJ has played against the Eagles, he's seen 14 targets, which is an absurd amount of targets. He's seeing about 13 or 11 to 13 targets per game this season already. So if you couple that with a couple touchdowns potentially, he's in a prime spot to do really well. Thursday night, you heard it in his press conference after last game. It's tough when you lose one of these hard games like they did to wait till next Sunday. He's saying he's ready to go. It could be player stock, but he's ready to go under these bright lights Thursday. This is OBJ's spot.
All right, well, let's go to the other side. As we know, Jay Ajayi's done for the year, so the question becomes, which back do we like tonight in Philly's backfield? Jeff, go ahead, bud.
Really all depends on the way you see this game going. I mean, both Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood are going to get work here. If you think it's going to be more of like a Giants might get out in front with the passing game and the Eagles are going to have to work from behind, I think Smallwood might be the play. He's worked well in the passing game with Carson Wentz the last couple of weeks. And they have used him in the red zone too. Take the opposite approach. Looks like Corey Clement's probably going to get the early down work. He's probably going to be the goal line back. And the Giants haven't been good against pure running backs either. So if you figure the Eagles are here, they're just going to dominate, then take Corey Clement. The reality is both of these guys could get points. Either one of them could be the dominant force tonight. It might just come down to who gets in the end zone.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference, too, with price. I mean, you're looking at a $900 difference there. Clement, $6,600. Smallwood, $5,700. Reed, how do you attack this situation here?
I think you trade for LaShawn McCoy or Le'Veon Bell. I mean, that's the first play up top. But if we're looking at this showdown game, I'm going to take Wendell Smallwood. And I think when you look at his efficiency, yes, he's getting potentially less carries, but at the same time, he's getting better yards. His yards per carry are higher than Clement's. Clement is still dealing potentially with a quad injury. He was practicing in full, so he should be good to go. At the same time, if you look at Smallwood, he is, like Jeff was saying, that pass catching back. So if they are down, which I do think they will be, Smallwood is still he was still producing, and he was still seeing 35% to 45% of the snaps when Ajayi was in, when they had the three-headed monster. So now if you have only two, you only think arithmetic says that he should get about 45 to 50% of the snaps. I like that. I like Smallwood's ability out of that pass-catching backfield. So for $600 cheaper, I'll take Smallwood.
And the last thing I'd say on this is last time Ajayi was out and Clement was active and like the lead back, he got over 50% of the snaps. So might not work out this week, but I anticipate he'll probably get more snaps. Doesn't mean he'll outproduce Smallwood, but.
Yeah, and Clement got a little banged up recently. Smallwood came in, handled his duties.
It also feels like Smallwood sometimes is a vulture in there, too, whether it's in the passing game or just kind of stealing that touchdown. I like him in this regard.
Bingo, Jesse, bingo. All right, well, if we're being honest, which, we are all the time here, sometimes too much, both of these offenses have been a roller coaster as neither have been super consistent so far this year. Does that make you want to target one of these defenses here, Reed?
Not really. I mean, you would think that common knowledge says, okay, short week, play that home defense and what we've seen in the past on Thursday night games, and that's the Giants. And Jeff said it off the top, the Giants are playing a little bit better on defense, especially against the quarterbacks. But if you look at them in terms of scoring percentage, of letting the offense score, 46% of the time the offense scores on drives, that's second worst. And so if you take that coupled with that Thursday night, it'd be tough to pinpoint at that price tag, which again is cheap. It'd be tough to pinpoint. The Eagles, again, like we talked about earlier, not really a defense that we're used to seeing from them. They're very opportunistic. So in terms of turnovers, you can get that. But in terms of attacking one of these defenses, I would say the Giants, but not extremely confident.
Jeff, I know you mentioned the Giants defense earlier. You're going with these guys tonight?
Yeah, I don't think they're like a must play. I mean, I'm not stuffing, if you have a main lineup, you don't have to just stuff them in there. I mean, I think avoiding both defenses is fine in this spot. Neither have been overly great, but the Giants have been pretty solid. I mean, they picked off Cam Newton twice last week. They probably did enough to win that game, got a little bit unlucky there at the end, but they also get Olivier Vernon back, which is a pretty big addition to their defensive line, a good pass rusher, and they've kind of been limited in that area so far this year. So I think that's a pretty big boost. I think coming off last week, it was a positive effort despite losing there in the last minute and then being at home. I just have not been impressed with the Philly offense so far this year. They're getting some of their pieces back. They're still weak in the backfield. The weakness of the Giants has been their run. Philly hasn't really been running the ball well this year. So I think this is a good spot for the Giants defense. Again, it's more of like just be a little bit over the field spot. You don't have to go crazy on them, I don't think. But I do think they have upside tonight.
All right, well, now for the most important part. We touched on this a little bit with OBJ, but the showdown contest, the captain. Boys, who is wearing that imaginary C tonight? Jeff, let's go.
Yeah, I mean, look, Odell is fine. You can pay up for Odell. It does limit some of your options in the other spots. There is guys like, I can't even remember his name now. What is that dude's name? JaVale Davis, who you can get for really cheap and fit him in with Odell and Eli. But I think if you're not going to go Odell, I'll just throw out the name Nelson Aguilar. Good matchup in the slot. If you think Philly's going to be paying a lot, it's another way you could go. But I think it's just Odell for me.
All right, Reed?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Jeff here. Not that first guy that I don't even know who he's talking about. But yeah, OBJ. I mean, if you look at his games, He's got 8 receptions, 90 yards averaging. He's got 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games that they've faced each other. This is a rivalry. OBJ, this is a prime spot for him to get back into whomever's good graces, so he doesn't bad talk his teammates and then say he's there for his teammates. Just produce, Odell.
We like the spot Saquon's in, Reed.
I do. I mean, again, Saquon, we've seen him go up against top 5, top 10 defenses, and he's done well. What you like about Saquon is like what we talked about off the top. Eli checks down a bunch. And so if you have that defensive line, which is a strong suit of the Eagles defense, you would think that Eli is going to check down. We've seen Barkley get double-digit targets in multiple games, and we've seen him in the past game, and again, get about 16 to 18 attempts in these spots where we think maybe against the Jaguars he's not going to do it, maybe against tougher defense he's not going to do it. He's still able to have a safe floor in these games. And so, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily put him in that captain spot just because there is a narrative that says he doesn't produce, but I think he's a safe floor.
Would you consider him
I don't know if it's a narrative necessarily. It's just what's been happening with the Eagles, right? I mean, they just limit the running back. They're really good. And you're right. I mean, he could definitely catch like 8 or 9 passes again. I think there's less of a chance of that happening in this game, though, which is why, again, and probably why you're the same. We just go with Odell because the trend has just been wide receivers killing the Eagles.
All right, that'll do, boys. We'll have you back for some NFL spin move coming up. But first, we're talking sticky puck right after Levitan's leverage. Adam Levitan, who is here with a Week 6 edition of Levitan's leverage. Adam, you've got 3 players for the people at home. So would you be so kind as to tell us who your first player is and why you're picking up what he is putting down, please?
It's got to be Julio Jones. I know he went up to Pittsburgh last week, had a really bad game, was shadowed by Joe Hayden, no catches in the entire first half, but the Falcons come out of that game expressing extreme desire to get Julio going in a really big home game for them against the Bucs. And this Bucs pass defense, you could make an argument, is just the stone worst in the entire league. So Julio's price has started to come down. He's down at 7,900 for a guy I project to see the most targets on the slate. It's a pretty easy play for me.
And just think, too, Adam, how productive he's been without even making one trip to the end zone this season.
Yeah, and I think they can do a better job of scheming him the ball in the end zone, but I wouldn't get too hung up on that. I mean, touchdowns are so variant from week to week, so I'd much rather try to project catches, yards, targets, etc.
All right, and you're sticking with a wide receiver for your second pick as well.
Yeah, up in Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd is in a really good spot because AJ Green will be shadowed by the aforementioned Joe Hayden, and Pittsburgh has struggled so badly at the cornerback spot. Opposite Joe Hayden, Tyler Boyd to me has been an unheralded player who I think has almost outperformed AJ Green in a lot of spots this year. Also likes to play out of the slot and also significantly cheaper. Tyler Boyd is still down at $6K. So with Tyler Eifert out, with Gio Bernard out, with Tyler Kroft maybe missing for the Bengals, it sets up really well for a lot of volume to go to Tyler Boyd.
All right, and we'll stay in the division, but we're going under center here. Please tell me why you like Baker Mayfield.
I just want to be early on this guy. You know, his price is still down in the low 5Ks, and I know that the matchup maybe on paper isn't as good as it could be against the Chargers, but this Chargers defense without Joey Bosa has really, really struggled this year to put pressure on the quarterback. And when you give Baker Mayfield time, he has the weapons in Njoku and Landry and Antonio Callaway and Duke Johnson to kind of pick you apart. So I think the Chargers defensive struggles continue here as they kind of come east for a 1 p.m. road start, and Baker continues his hot start to his NFL career after putting up just such massive numbers in college, obviously.
Yeah, nearly 22 DK fantasy points last game. You're looking at this as a sign of things to come.
Yeah, and Baker's done it every time that he's been on the field since he got to Oklahoma, just continually putting up big numbers, big fantasy numbers. So I really don't think that it's going to slow down, certainly not in this spot at home against the Chargers.
All right, Adam Levitan, the knowledge you just dropped on me and the people at home is greatly appreciated. We appreciate you, and I'm very happy we did not disturb your dog Snoozle.
She's a beautiful beast.
Yes, she is. Aren't they all? Yeah, shout out to Adam's dog, Jerry. It's Jerry with a G.
Very nice.
Yep, the more you know. Welcome back to the Sweat, and let's hit the ice with a 12-game slate in the NHL tonight. Last night, only 3 games. Much more to choose from this evening.
A lot more action. And to help us make sense of the big slate is the Action Network's Joe Holka and Sean Newsham. Right off the jump, we're going to get into Tears of Joy.
All right, there is a star-studded top tier tonight with the likes of Austin Matthews, Patrick Kane, Tavares, Ovi. Who's the stud you want, Joe?
Yeah, I think I know which direction Sean's going to go here, but I'm going to say Austin Matthews. He's making a pretty legitimate case to be the highest paid player in the NHL. They're going through their contract negotiations right now. I just think he's kind of closing the gap on players like McDavid and Crosby every single day. Sure, love Ovechkin's floor per usual, but I don't mind the pivot to Matthews in tournaments because it's a really good matchup against Detroit tonight.
Joe, which direction did you think Sean was going to go in? And let's find out if you are correct.
Oh, I'm sure it's Ovechkin because I think he's a great play as well.
Okay, go ahead, Sean. Is he correct?
Yep, Joe is actually correct this
Ding,
time.
ding.
I'm going to go with Alexander Ovechkin. He has a long track record of just piling shots on goal, being the leading shot producer each of the last couple of years and being one of the highest volume shooters in the entire league. So you have a very plus matchup tonight against New Jersey. And Alexander Ovechkin had a very strong night last night, and he's been averaging about 5 shots per game. So it's very clear he doesn't have a hangover from the Stanley Cup win, and he is playing at a very high level still.
All right, tier 2 now. A couple of Bruins, including Patrice Bergeron, who is coming off a Hattie earlier in the week. Who are we looking at here, Sean?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go right where you were just talking. I'm going to go with Patrice Bergeron. He has a difficult matchup as he's going to run into Connor McDavid a bit tonight, but Patrice Bergeron is one of the best two-way centers in the entire NHL, and he has a long track record as well of producing good fantasy stats due to his shot volume and blocking a few shots as well. Fresh off a hat trick, I think this is a great spot to look at Patrice Bergeron yet again.
All right, Joe, we feel that same way, or maybe give us another one.
I like Bergeron a lot. I'll go Nathan Mackinnon, though. He actually has the highest shot prediction of any player today in our models over at Labs. And sorry, Sean, but your Buffalo Sabres are still very bad. 6th most shots against in the league.
Ooh.
Just an awesome spot for a high-volume shooter like McKinnon. So I like him a lot in this tier.
Shots
Give us that
fired.
rebuttal, Sean. Come on, now you got to fight back here.
It's all right, Joe. Joe's sitting on his high horse after his team, the Coyotes, finally scored a goal after 3 games yesterday.
This is what we like, guys.
I like it. No love lost here. And let's see if it continues in the third round, third tier. It features a couple of young stars from the 2015 NHL draft in Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel. Are we taking either of those guys here, Sean?
Yeah, as much as I'd love to go Connor McDavid, who I think is the best player in the entire NHL, I'm actually going to go right to Buffalo with Jack Eichel. His minutes are up at an unprecedented level for him. He's playing about 22 to 23 minutes per game right now. He's looking like he's playing and using the increased ice time to fire more shots at net. He's picking up that ice time due to the trade of Ryan O'Reilly in the offseason, but Jack Eichel is very clearly the key focal point for the Buffalo Sabres. So with that and the minutes he's playing, I think he's a great option tonight in Tier 3.
All right, Joe, give us your pick, and feel free to rib your buddy over here.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I think I'm going to go with Marner over McDavid here. I just talked about the Matthews contract, but Toronto just has some issues with some of these young guys that they have that it's going to be tough for them to sign them all. I'll give Sean a little bit of props. So he did mention that Marner could be in for a breakout season on the last show. I totally agree with him. Just watching this guy out there, it's pretty amazing what he's been able to do. And stacking him up with Austin Matthews on that first power play unit for Toronto seems like a decent way to go in tournaments for this year.
All right, so we've hit the first 3 tiers. Is there a clear-cut guy out of the remaining tiers for you, Joe?
I like Vincent Trocheck, especially in the tier number 6. I just don't think he really belongs in that tier, to be completely honest. It is a big slate, but we talked about him earlier today on our Inside the Lab show over at Fantasy Labs. 96 percentile shot attempts over the past year. These Florida guys are just always so underrated, so not surprised to see him in tier 6, but definitely going to snag him there and feel pretty good about it.
What about for you, Sean? Is there someone you're eyeing? Grab some value here in this situation?
Yeah, I actually love Trocheck as well, like Joe talked about, but I'm going to go down to even Tier 7. Brent Burns right now is in Tier 7, and I actually have no idea how that's possible. He's, over the last few years, been the best producer in fantasy DFS as a whole, including everybody. So to see him in Tier 7 is something you've just never seen before. His numbers are down a little bit to start this season thus far, but I think that those things are just sort of a small sample size, and we're going to revert back to his usual mean as well. So I'm going to go with Brent Burns in Tier 7.
All right, boys, thanks for the insight. Coming up next on The Sweat, we're going to go through the headlines in the NFL for Week 6 before we kick it off tonight.
Carolyn Azak here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Jimmy Butler made his return to practice yesterday, and let's put it this way, he wants out. Usually this would be a celebration for Minnesota, but the Timberwolves are probably now wishing he stayed home, since he told his teammates they can't win without him. Butler was a big part of the Timberwolves' return to the playoffs last season after a 14-year absence, averaging 41 fantasy points per game, even though he missed 17 games. This Timberwolves roster isn't mixing well, so if Butler stays, this could be a team in turmoil. And if he goes, that leaves noteworthy players like Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jeff Teague, all benefiting from the trade in volume and stats.
Getting back into some NFL talk here on The Sweat. Instead of listening to us yammer about the latest headlines of the day, well, we decided, after a long debate, we decided to bring back DK Live's Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich. Guys, what's up with the latest happenings in the NFL? We're going to talk about it here.
All right, the NFL Network is reporting that Falcons running back Devontae Freeman's status for Sunday is in doubt when they take on the Buccaneers. He is dealing with a foot injury. This guy is injured, it feels like, every week. Yeah. If he can't go, is there anyone worth rostering in the Atlanta backfield? Reed, maybe Coleman here? I know that's Jeff's guy. Jeff's got this man crush on him.
I know. I was going to probably let Jeff go first, but I'll answer this. I mean, this one's going to be a hard one to figure out. Last year, we saw Tevin Coleman really perform when Freeman is out, but this is more an indictment on Freeman's injury status. He, like you said, is built like glass. He's always injured. And so if you play that same theory out with Tevin Coleman, who has his own issues, potentially with sickle cell, some of the stuff that he deals with, is you want to ration these guys so they don't have a cascading effect back at running back. Ito Smith is a guy who has seen more snaps, more attempts as the weeks have gone by. And when you've seen him play, he deserves to be on the field. I mean, when you look at him, he's, and again, not going to get you 15 to 20 attempts like a workhorse, but he does well in the pass game. He's seen 35 to 40% of the snaps. In that week 4 game against Cincinnati, it was like a 60-40 split between Coleman and Smith. And so if you want to ride Coleman, it's tough sledding because we haven't seen yet in really good spots him pay back his ROI. So there's no one I'm really targeting here, and hopefully Jeff can shine some light on Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, but Reed, we were talking before the show. Didn't we say that the Tampa Bay's defense, gives up 30-plus points a game, right, to opposing running backs?
Well, but you also have to think about Tampa Bay's pass defense as well as the second worst in the league, right? So what you do is you really pass against these guys. Both running backs are pass catching, so that bodes well for them in terms of their floor. But at the same time, I mean, if we, again, go hammer Tevin Coleman, Ito Smith has he carves out a position in this backfield where you have to worry about how many attempts that he does get. So again, Tevin Coleman is not someone that I'm rostering in any of my lineups.
Oh, I can tell you who probably is, though. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Sure, why not? I mean, hey, he's screwed me three weeks already. Why not go back for a fourth this week? I don't know, man. I mean, it should be such a good spot for Tevin Coleman when Devontae Freeman is out. And it just has not worked out this year, whether it's, Ito Smith getting the touchdowns at the goal line or just Tevin Coleman, just not getting the touchdowns. They're passing it on the 1 yard line instead of giving it to their best goal line back. I don't know. It just has not worked out. You look back last year, he actually had a start without Devontae Freeman, 19 carries, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think everyone's going to be on Julio Jones in this game. It makes a lot of sense. I will say this, Jameis Winston, turnover-prone quarterback, Atlanta's favorite in this game. They're at home. Maybe it's a spot where their defense pops up, and maybe Tevin Coleman gets a little bit more of the work. I think it's an interesting tournament play. I don't think it's something I'm going to sell out my soul to get. The price is right, but Reed's right. This could work either way.
Keep going back to the well, so you're right at some point.
I know that's hard for Jeff to say. Reed is right.
Wow. Very,
hey,
very
Reed
impressive.
is like the Falcon Whisperer. I fully admit it.
Peak of the week, baby. Let's do this.
Wow. Very good. All right. Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, they suffered concussions last week, but Rams head coach Sean McVay says he feels good about their chances this week. But how do we feel? Are we putting these guys in lineups this week? Jeff, go ahead.
I really like the spot for Brandon Cooks here if he gets cleared. You look at the Broncos secondary, and they have Chris Harris in the slot. That should limit Cooper Kupp this week. He had he's been running wild the last couple of weeks. I think most people will just try and get back on him. But Brandon Cooks on the outside against an aging Pac-Man Jones, I really like that matchup, and that is where people have been burning the Broncos secondary. You saw it last week with Robbie Anderson. Brandon Cooks is like a better version of Robbie Anderson. So if he's back, I'm all over this Brandon Cooks, Jared Goff stack this week.
Okay, Reed, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're going to choose between the two, Brandon Cooks is definitely the tournament play. Jeff's right. I mean, when you look at Kupp, we've seen him on primetime television doing really well, and rightfully so. He's top 5 in red zone efficiency. He's seeing 11 targets in the red zone so far this year. But the Browns are top 10 for opposing running backs too, dropping 41 DK fantasy points that opposing receivers are doing. So when you look at if these guys are playing, it'll be tough if you're talking about season long. It'd be tough to not play them. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Brandon Cooks is a number 21 receiver so far. You got to fire him up because I think he's a fine GPP play. I think he's a mismatch for any cornerback. We've seen a couple of bigger, like Xavier Howard's, stop a guy like Brandon Cooks. But this year, especially with that team, and if Kupp is in, you're going to see a lot of one-on-ones with Cooks, and he can beat anyone. So if I had to choose between the two, it'd be Brandon Cooks.
Do you ever get nervous, though, in the situation where, yes, a guy is able to come back, but I feel like we always just assume, he's a full go. Is there any chance that one of these guys could be limited and that kind of, shakes you the wrong way here, Jeff?
Not really. I mean, it's concussion. Either you're over your concussion now. I mean, they've made it so clear with the concussion guidelines. Either you're good to go, you're fine, or you're not playing, right? So there's no in between. You can't be like, you can't play through a concussion anymore, right? So if he's cleared, he's cleared. I guess long-term, he's probably at risk of another concussion, but I don't know. What football player hasn't had a concussion at this point, right?
That's a fair point.
I'm not too worried about it, to be honest.
No, same thing, Reed? Not even worried about it?
Yeah, and plus, how can you predict what's going to happen? And if you look at Kupp, it both happened. Well, Brandon Cooks, he got lit up across the middle.
Yeah, that was a dirty hit.
He got blindsided. And Kupp, he realized it happened when he hit the ground, I believe. So these type of plays, you can't really predict. Again, if you're trying to say that, okay, because he's had a concussion, it's cascading to another one, that's tough to predict in terms of DFS. If you want to play that angle and totally fade these guys and go Robert Woods potentially, you can do that. But the reason why Kupp is such a valuable asset to this team is he really is that receiver tight end hybrid that they're using. That's why we haven't seen Tyler Higbee. If these guys, for whatever reason, pop up and they're not able to go, like Kupp specifically, Higbee could be in a spot because he is essentially the receiver, the tight end who is built like a receiver. Josh Reynolds obviously gets a bump up because that's he's in third in line or second in line in terms of that position. But if these guys are able to go, just play them.
All right. Well, from a couple guys who are a little banged up to a couple guys who are returning to action, how about in Green Bay, Geronimo Allison, Randall Cobb? They are returning now to practice. So how much more appealing is Aaron Rodgers this week, Jeff?
I mean, Aaron Rodgers went off last week without them, so I don't know how much more appealing necessarily he is. I mean, he was already appealing, I guess is what I was trying to say, right? I think the main thing with Aaron Rodgers is he looks like he's over his knee issue, or at least it's gotten better. He got dragged down hard a couple times last week, and he got popped up fine. So I think any worry you had that he's carrying along an injury that might be limiting him is probably gone at this point. Yeah, the addition of Cobb and Allison back, sure, that's good. But I mean, the young receivers played well last week. I mean, I think they actually looked better than Geronimo Allison at some points in that game. So I don't know. It helps them, but it's a prime matchup anyways. And the thing I'm more concerned about Rodgers is just he looks healthy now.
Yeah, I do feel like he's a guy, Rodgers, you could throw like Reed out there and you could make Reed look good. But
let's not take it too far, Emerson.
But I can confirm Geronimo Allison and Randall Cobb are much better than Reed at catching the football. But
that is not slated
does Rodgers become more?
Don't do it, producers. But look, Jeff's right. Rodgers is receiver proof. There's such a thing, right? I mean, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, MVS, I think that is his acronym or his nickname is supposed to be after this one game, saw 10 targets. He almost had 2 touchdowns if it wasn't for that fumble at the goal line. And Geronimo Allison in 3.5 quarters saw 11 targets. This is the same guy who made Jeff Janis a thing too last year, the year before. I mean, so whatever wide receiver 2 you put out there with Rodgers, he's going to make them into something that we can potentially do in GPPs for DFS. So in the Showdown, for instance, on Monday night, if you're playing that, Marquez did present some potential upside because what we said in the beginning, even the preseason, Geronimo Allison was someone that we were looking at because whoever is that wide receiver 2 in Green Bay is going to get production. We've seen it with Cobb. We've seen it, obviously, Jordy being number 1. We've seen it a long time. So Rodgers' value, it's a safer floor if those guys are out or if those guys are in, obviously. But at the same time, his value doesn't diminish that much if those guys are out.
All right, well, we got a extremely satisfying and delicious looking game on Sunday night. We're going to have the Patriots. We're going to have Kansas City. A couple stud tight ends squaring off on Sunday Night Football. Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce. Now, Gronk said this week that he needs to pick up the slack. He needs to end his scoring drought because he hasn't scored since week 1. Which guy do you like better on Sunday night, Reed?
That's got to be Gronk here. I mean, I think he's a fine play, but Gronk, in terms of what he's able to do, and if you look at Kansas City, is top 3 for opposing tight ends, and they really don't have anyone to stop Gronk. I mean, now you have the full fold of receivers and skill position guys. Gordon is going to be able to stretch the field. Like Eric Berry, even if he was in, he's still dealing with an Achilles injury. They don't have any pass coverage linebackers. Deion Buchanan obviously is out there on the trading block, so I don't know why these guys aren't potentially trading for him. In Arizona, no one's going to be able to stop him. And so when you look at that matchup in the high-scoring game, Gronk is a guy that's in a prime spot to go off because, again, if you look at that defense, no one can cover him. And if he gets any one-on-one coverages, you're sure that Brady is going to attack Gronk. So I really like Gronk in this position as opposed to Kelce. There is a narrative that says that you just run the ball on New England. But at the same time, these guys, there's so many opportunities, there's so many options in Kansas City that to hone in on one guy would be kind of tough. So good spot, but I'm choosing Gronk.
Jeff, Kelce's averaging 19.1 fantasy points per game. You going with him?
He's just been slicing defenses up. I think everyone got so concerned with stopping Tyreek Hill after week 1 that they're just like, oh yeah, we'll just double cover him, make sure contain him, and then we'll just leave everyone else open. And Kelce's just been eating it up, right? So I think this is a matchup where you could see that get a little bit reversed. The Patriots are smart enough to recognize that you can't just leave Travis Kelce open all the time, or Patrick Mahomes will just completely slice you apart, which is what he's been doing the last 3 weeks. So both of these teams haven't really been good at stopping the tight end, but I do feel like there's more of a chance that the Patriots will shift over some help, maybe a corner to help on Travis Kelce this week. So I would go with Gronk here too. The matchup with KC, I think Reed hit on it. I don't know if they have anyone to stop him. So it's just a matter of Brady getting time to get the ball to him downfield.
Yeah, the Patriots actually done pretty well against Travis Kelce. You remember back to that blowout last year. That was really just, Tyreek Hill. That was Kareem Hunt. They kind of kept Kelce pretty quiet there. So you never know on that one. All right, well, moving on. Right. The Bucs are gearing up for their Jameis Winston, his first start of the season. And as they try to get people hyped up for this one, they actually posted a video of him this morning of only him. So, Reed, does this pump-up video do anything for you to drop $5,800 on him this week?
I think it does. Yeah, absolutely.
Got you fired up? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it got me fired. I mean, Jameis doesn't really get me fired up that much because he's been able to throw 3 interceptions in a single game. But last 4 games, he's thrown an average of 3 touchdowns and 35 attempts that he has played. Atlanta gives us the 3rd most to opposing quarterbacks, and this 57.5 implied game total, what we've been talking about at the top of the show, and if we want to talk about Julio and Mike Evans and all of these guys and Matt Ryan, all of them are in a prime spot, and the fire truck's going off because this is such a hot take that this guy is in a prime spot. So 5,800 is not a bad price to go after. He's not, wildly, he's not above 6K. If he started going above 6K, I would say, yeah, it's a little bit too much for the first game back. But this entire offense, again, it was firing under Fitzpatrick. Jameis Winston is a better quarterback right now than Fitzpatrick is. So, yeah, give me him at this price. I don't mind.
All right, Jeff, do you think there's going to be some Jameis magic?
Dare you besmirch the Fitzmagic. I don't know if Jameis Winston, in all seriousness, I don't know if he is a better quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, what have we seen from him the last few years? The teams don't make playoffs. He throws a ton of interceptions. Like, yeah, he can run a little bit. He's big. I don't know. Look, the price is right. I mean, the matchup is great. Obviously, everyone's going to be flocking to this guy because you look at under 6K this week, and he's in the game with the highest point total. Tampa Bay's been slinging it all around the field. They can't run the ball. So, sure, he makes a ton of sense. He's attractive from a fantasy standpoint. I don't know. I mean, I think in tournaments you can definitely fade him. There's a lot of better quarterbacks on the slate in good spots, too. I mean, Kirk Cousins is huge favorite. So he's been killing it this year. Guys like that. Jared Goff is 6K. Cam Newton's had a really good start at 6,100. I get the attraction to Jameis Winston this week. I just don't think that it's just a given that he's going to come through here or be a top 5 quarterback this week. I think there's a very good chance, but yeah, I have my doubts, I guess.
All right, well, fair enough. All right, boys, we'll have you back on here in a little minute to go through some NFL price checks for Week 6.
Because right now we're going to head back to our NHL conversation with the Action Network's Joe Holka and Sean Newsham.
All right, boys, we're going to go down some of the showdown picks for tonight. And let's start off at the top. Kyle Connor is the highest priced player on the board at $11,500.
That's a lot of money.
Is he worth that price, Joe?
This was a weird one for me. I don't think he is worth that. I much prefer guys like Philip Forsberg, Blake Wheeler. There's just too many guys in the mid-range that are underpriced as far as the defensemen that I'm sure we'll talk about. And then if you want to roster the goaltenders, like you have to make some sacrifices somewhere. I really don't think Kyle Connor's worth it as the highest price guy in this game. That just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, Sean, you feel that same way? Too rich for your blood?
Yeah, I just think it's way too rich. Actually, about 2 hours ago, I was sitting here enjoying my non-Joe time of the day, and I actually got a message from Joe asking me, how is Kyle Connor the highest priced player on the slate, in the Showdown slate? So, yeah, I think it's just way too high. I think Joe's right on that. It just doesn't make much sense. You have guys like Patrick Laine, Blake Wheeler, Philip Forsberg. I'd much rather pay salary for them than pay all the way up for Kyle Connor.
Joe, you're trying to get some inside scoop here? Huh?
Sean had his picks in about an hour before I did, because when it gets away from me, I guess kind of keep working. So I guess he usually gets his in a little bit quicker. So I was a little bit surprised when I finally saw the price.
All right, fair enough, Joe. Just joshing you, buddy. All right, out of the netminders tonight, guys, who do we like rostering the most? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I actually don't mind the idea of playing both of them. That's a strategy that Sean and I have kind of talked through together. Kind of give yourself the upside of getting the win no matter what, right? And then the saves for both guys. It kind of depends on the pricing. I definitely think that this is a game where it's in consideration. So it's not that I have one lean one way or the other. I'm either going to play neither of them or I'm going to play both.
What are you going to do in this situation, Sean? You going to play both?
Yeah, I think it's definitely an option. Joe and I looked at it, actually, like he just talked about, and about a week ago we did the math, and he found that last season goaltenders average about 11.5 points per game in Showdown, while skaters average about 8.5. So I think if you are in cash, you have the option to play both of them, and it's fine. In GPP, I think you want to play one of them and stack sort of against that other team's goalie. But yeah, playing both in cash especially is definitely an option.
Well, Sean, let's dig deep here. Let's look for some value. That is the name of the game after all. So give us a value play.
Yeah, for me, my favorite value on this slate is Kevin Fiala. He's back up into the top line, and then into the second line and playing second power play time as well. The first couple games of the season, he was playing about 10 to 12 minutes, which was a little bit low for him. But last game, he ended up playing 19 minutes once getting moved back up the depth chart, and he ended up having a 4-shot game. So I think at 5,400, the price he's at right now, that's a really good value for a Showdown slate.
Joe, who are you looking to for value?
Yeah, I like Fiala quite a bit. He was one of the guys that stood out to me right away as well. But I'm going to go with Ryan Ellis at 5,200. The fact that he's less than half the price of Kyle Connor is pretty egregious, given that he has better peripheral numbers over the past year, at least 93rd percentile in shots plus blocks. So really nice floor for a guy like Ellis, and that price is extremely low. So he allows you to kind of fit in whatever you want after that, basically.
All right, let's wrap things up now with Slate approved. So give us your lock tonight, Sean.
So I really smashed it the other night with Mitch Marner. He ended up having a goal and 3 assists. A little bit strapped because of this game, but I'm going to go with Dustin Byfuglien. I think his price is a little bit too cheap compared to what we know he does on the ice. He started out the season a little bit slow, which is where you're getting the issue and why his price is so low. Normally, you'd see Byfuglien be one of the top price players in this game, but because of what he's done this season, and he's really lacked shots and blocked shots as well, he hasn't really gone on the scoreboard. It's really reduced his price. So Dustin Byfuglien's my lock of the slate.
All right, Joe, lock it up here.
Yeah, I always love Big Buff, so great call there, Sean. Only player in this game in the 99th percentile in shots plus blocks is Roman Josi, and he's actually only the 11th most expensive player. So I think you just lock in that floor and move on in cash games and feel pretty good about it.
All right, boys, love it. Sean, Joe, thanks a bunch. Coming up next, we're in the Final Four in the MLB. We're going to talk some playoff baseball with our experts. Next on The Sweat.
Hey, I'm Tara Lanazak with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. LeBron James displayed his athleticism in true king form last night. In only 18 minutes, he put up 15 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and delivered his first buzzer beater as a Laker. LBJ averaged 55 fantasy points per game last year, so you can see why people are thinking about making him their #1 pick. Brandon Ingram also had a huge game, putting up 23 points, taking over the second half to a victory. Safe to say, we will see this team be better than last year, and LeBron having a big impact on the team, being a reliable player and running that high-tempo offense.
All right, welcome back here on The Sweat, ladies and gentlemen. The League Championship Series about to kick off this weekend, and what better way to gear up for it than with our two good friends. DK Live's Steve Buchanan, Action Matt LaMarca of the Action Network. Good to see you both.
I mean, I guess he's my friend.
Come on.
Well, I mean,
you love me.
You said friend. I was looking around like where?
I like it.
Well, we meant
It's a
more like
love-hate
you
relationship.
guys, yeah, we know you guys don't like each other.
And that's the whole point. That's why we bring you guys in, to go toe-to-toe, head-to-head. And you know what? Let's just jump into Chase Fade. We're going to throw some bold takes at you. Tell us if you're picking up what we're putting down. Leading off, we're looking at Red Sox, Xander Bogaerts. He will be the ALCS MVP. What do we think, Bukes?
I'm going to fade this one. This feels like more of a series where a pitcher is probably going to grab the MVP honors here. I mean, the Red Sox have to face Justin Verlander, Garrett Cole. Astros have to face Chris Sale. I guess David Price, Nathan Eovaldi. I mean, I would say, though, that Bogaerts puts the ball in play more often than not. He only had a 16 K percentage against righties on the year. So this isn't a guy that's not going to strike out a lot. He's definitely going to have put the ball in play here. But there's just a lot of good pitching on this in this series overall that I feel like, if the batters are really going to get going, it's probably going to be against the bullpens, not in the early parts of the game here. So I got to give the pitchers the MVP honors here in this one. Definitely not Bogaerts.
Okay, well, definitely not David Price either, but that's a story for a different day.
No, you're right.
Matt, what are we thinking?
Yeah, Bogaerts is a definite fade for me. The Astros pitching staff is undoubtedly the best in baseball. They led all teams this season in ERA, FIP, K per 9, and WAR. Their bullpen was also the best in baseball. They had the best ERA out of the pen. So I think that the Astros pitching staff is just going to present a ton of problems to the Red Sox. And even if one of them does get to the Astros pitching staff, I still don't think it's going to be Bogaerts. I'd rather go with a guy like Mookie Betts, JD Martinez, or Andrew Benintendi. I think all those guys have a better chance of winning MVP than Bogaerts does.
All right, Bukes, hold on. Let me just throw this stat out at you then. All right, so, we're not just throwing out willy-nilly that Bogaerts could be the ALCS MVP. He did hit .444 against Houston this year. What do you think about that?
Wow, Steve.
I mean, that's great and all, but I mean, here comes the playoffs, and it's a whole different animal here in this one. I mean, look, it's not like he's going to have a bad series. I don't think that's certainly in play here, but you're going up against the best and the best in this spot here, so it's a whole different ballgame once you get to the playoffs, right, New York Yankees?
Well, that's also true. Matt, I didn't change your mind at all with that stat?
Nah, not really.
All right, guys. Sounds like Xander Bogaerts will be a lock for ALCS MVP. Looking into the Houston bullpen, Roberto Osuna will have at least 2 saves in this series. What are we thinking here, Matt?
I'm going to chase this one. The Red Sox were undoubtedly the best team in baseball during the regular season, but I just think the Astros are the better team in this matchup. They've got the better rotation, the better bullpen, better lineup top to bottom. So I think they're going to be in position to win a bunch of games in this series. And I think Osuna should get a couple save opportunities at a minimum. He's been lights out as a member of the Astros this season. He's got an ERA under 2. And obviously he was scoreless in the first round of the playoffs. So I think Osuna is a really good bet to pick up a couple of saves at the back end of the Astros bullpen.
He's pretty doggone good, Steve. You thinking he's going to 2 saves, lock him up this series?
I think this is a bit of a mismatch for him. I mean, the Red Sox aren't a team that strike out much. They ended the year with the second lowest K percentage in the league against righties, besides, ironically, the Astros. I mean, the Red Sox put plenty of balls in play, and Osuna, as you'd imagine, sees a fairly big jump in his splits with guys on base. So obviously, you're not expecting lights out there, but his splits jump pretty high once guys get on base there. And if there's a team that's going to get on base, it's going to be the Red Sox here. So he'll definitely get his opportunities here. I mean, the Red Sox bullpen is certainly not going to hold down leads for their starters, so there's definitely going to be offense in the later part of this game. But I just don't think it's going to go smoothly for him.
All right, well, let's kick things over to the National League. Clayton Kershaw, NLCS MVP. Chaser fade, Steve?
Yeah, this is a definite fade for me. I mean, Kershaw is he's still just not the pitcher that we are used to. Granted, he did not have a bad season by any means, but the Brewers have just been so good against lefties this season. It's hard to like Kershaw in this series with them potentially facing him twice. I'm not saying Kershaw is going to go out and last 2 innings, give up 5 runs or anything like that, but he didn't exactly fill us with a mountain of confidence heading into the playoffs. He had a subpar September at best, and he gave up 35% of his season home run totals in the month alone in September. And now he's facing a powerful Brewers team. They have a much better ballpark there. That's where the majority of these games are going to be played in Miller Park. So I do not see Kershaw being the MVP here. This is a series that the hitter probably will get the MVP here, but Kershaw, no, I don't see that at all.
Yeah, nearly $16,000 to put him in your lineup for tomorrow night's showdown mode here.
How about no?
Yeah. What about you, Matt? How about yes? How about no?
Yeah, I'm going to fade it too. I mean, I like him a little more than Steve does, but if you look at his 2018 numbers, most pitchers would kill for these marks. 2.73 ERA and an 8.6 K per nine. But those were basically the worst marks he's ever posted in the major leagues. So he might be on a little bit of a decline here. And Steve mentioned the Brewers are just really strong against left-handed pitching. They don't strike out much. So it's going to be a tough spot for him. If I was going to back a Dodgers pitcher to win the MVP, it would be Walker Buehler, who I think has been their best pitcher basically over the second half of the season.
Okay. Except for his last game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that doesn't matter at all.
Who cares? Doesn't matter at all. Well, let's talk about the Brew Crew. Christian Yelich, he will hit at least 2 home runs in this series. What do you think, Bukes?
I mean, that's like saying, am I going to wake up tomorrow? I mean, yeah,
It's true.
I mean, I would hope so. But yeah, I mean, he's just one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. It doesn't get any hotter than him right now. He's literally doing it all for the Brewers. I feel like this is why they're in the playoffs right now. 22 home runs at home where they'll play the first 2 games. And of course, if they make it to games 6 and 7, they'll be back there. Even in the left-on-left matchups where you'd expect his numbers aren't as favorable, he throws a 250 isolated power, which is super impressive when you take a look at what he has against righties. His isolated power was at 281. So he's almost matching his power numbers against lefties, and then against righties, it's almost the same. I mean, the kid is just absolutely ridiculous. He should be singing his praises to the Marlins. Thank God for getting me out of that town there. Yeah, the Brewers, I mean, I love the Brewers in this series. I think Yelich is going to be a huge part of that, per the usual.
Yeah, he's pretty good. What do we think?
Good.
Sweatometer going off there. Well done, everybody.
There you go. Good job all around.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy that the Marlins traded Yelich and Giancarlo Stanton, and Stanton turned out to be the worst player that they traded of the two. Yelich is that good. I mean, this is obviously going to be a difficult task. The Dodgers' ERA this season was second best in the league, trailed only the Astros. So they're a really strong pitching team, but Yelich is just a flat-out hitter, man. He had a WRC plus of at least 162 to both right and left-handed pitchers. So it doesn't matter who's on the mound. If he's on the reverse side of his splits, Yelich is going to be in a position to do some damage. He went yard once during the NLDS. That was only a 3-game series. The Brewers have home field, so I think Yelich might be able to find 2 home runs in this series.
All right, dudes. Now time for the big one. Bring your predictions to the center of the diamond, please. Who do we have winning these series? Both of them. Steve.
I think the Red Sox are going to squeak this one out. I think it's going to go 6 or 7 games, but I do think they'll be able to get it here. And then the NLCS, people are not giving the Brewers a fair shot here. I'm actually pretty surprised that the Dodgers are favored as heavily as they are here, but I love the Brew Crew. I think it sets up a really awesome World Series, Red Sox and Brewers.
All right, what about you, Matt?
Well, as usual, I am in complete disagreement with Steve.
Yeah.
I've got the Astros in 6 games over the Red Sox, and I've got the Dodgers in 7.
Well, that's pretty terrible.
I actually wouldn't hate
Rematch.
give me Red Sox Dodgers. I would like
all right.
that.
Well, I like Boston LA too. That would
Yeah.
be pretty good. I mean, it's
That's what I'm saying.
usually basketball, but we'll take baseball this time around.
All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming on the show. We appreciate it. Up next on the Sweat, we are going to jump back into Thursday Night Football. But first, we have our Buffalo Wild Wings hot picks.
Pat Mayo here with your Thursday night hot picks for the Week 6 opener. Eagles Giants presented Buffalo Wild Wings. The last 2 Thursdays saw beaucoup fantasy points for everyone on the field. Now, we may need to dial that back a little bit for this NFC East battle and focus really where the ball's likeliest to go. Well, the Giants D has not been great. Janoris Jenkins has done an excellent job of limiting wide receiver 1 so far this season, leaving Nelson Aguilar a candidate for a much larger target share. Let's be real. If Alshon Jeffrey is on lockdown, just side with the guy with an every week floor regardless of opponent, Zach Ertz. Ertz has seen double-digit targets in every game this season, cracking 10 catches 3 times, and finally found pay dirt week 5. He's a great play every week just based on his reception base, but when he finds the end zone, he's usually the top play in the game. Lock Ertz into your captain slot. For the Giants, there's enough injury concern to scare off a lot of people. If Evan Ingram sits again, you're going to need to have Sterling Shepard, but let's wait and see. Saquon Barkley suffering from an unknown lower body injury and walks into a tough matchup with the Eagles D. So, go with the obvious choice and just pencil in Odell Beckham against a Philly secondary who seems to relish in giving up big plays. Those are the Thursday night hot picks for Eagles Giants. I'm Pat Mayo.
All right, guys, final few minutes here on the Sweat. Let's kick it back to the NFL. Got some NFL talk, week 6. Well, it tees off tonight in New York, but we've told you about that already.
Pretty excited about it.
DK Live's Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich back with us. We're going through some price checks as we enter the weekend together. Phillip Rivers is down $800 to $5,900. He's on the road facing the Browns. Is that the right price for Rivers this week, Reed?
I want to say no. I think it's nice, obviously, when you get a quarterback of his caliber under $6K. But if you look at that matchup, and I talked about it a little bit earlier, Melvin Gordon is someone that I really like. And if you want to stop this pretty stout defense in terms of total defense or overall defense, they're number 2nd in DVOA. You're going to want to stop them from potentially attacking your quarterback. They got 14 sacks, 8 interceptions. A lot of that has to do with that defensive line being very fast off the edges. So I think Gordon's a fine play here. If you're looking at quarterbacks too, Wilson is below him, and I do like him in London against Oakland. Winston, obviously, we talked about earlier, guys that are a little bit cheaper. And if you look at Rivers against tough defenses too, he doesn't throw that much, 23 and 30 attempts in against the Rams and a tougher defense than what we've seen so far. It's really up and down for Rivers in terms of how his volume passing. We've seen him go to over 50 to go to under 30. So I'm going to pass on Rivers. That price is a little too expensive for me.
Jeff, Phillips price tag $5,900. Is that something you might be interested in?
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, I actually think it the other way. I think he's a little bit too cheap. I mean, you look what Phillip Rivers has done so far this year. At least 2 touchdowns in every game. Three games with 3 passing touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, the traditional way to attack the Browns defense has been against the run. And I agree, it's a good spot for Melvin Gordon. It doesn't mean that Phillip Rivers can't go off in this game. The Browns play at a very high pace. Keenan Allen has a good matchup in the slot against TJ Carey, probably their weakest spot in their secondary. So if this game gets a little out of control, if Baker Mayfield starts putting up points, I mean, Phillip Rivers is going to have to respond. So I think this is a good tournament spot. And at this price, I'm very interested in Phillip Rivers this week. I think this is too cheap.
Okay, we'll stick with quarterbacks here. Super Cam is kind of on a super cheap deal. He's down $300, $6,100 for this slate. Takes on the Redskins this week. Is he priced properly, Jeff?
You know, you look at it and you say, well, Cam's been good, and like the Redskins just got torched by Drew Brees last week. But it's a pretty solid defense. I mean, even going back to last year, it's a solid unit with good cornerbacks. So Cam has been playing so well that, he could overcome this and put up, a rushing touchdown or something and a couple passing touchdowns. But I think given the matchup and the game total we have and the implied team totals, which really aren't that high, I think it's like a 45-point total right now. And Carolina is actually like a 21 or a 22-point implied team total. I think it's a pretty good price. I mean, I think if anything, it might be even a little too expensive for Cam this week. Again, not dissing Cam. He's played well. He's been really good, but I think it's a spot where I can avoid him.
All right, Reed, what do we think? We agree?
No, I'm going opposite. Same way Jeff went opposite on Rivers. I like Cam Newton in this spot. Short week, and talking about Washington, yeah, in terms of their statistics, they do pan out really well over the season, but we saw what happened. I mean, Drew Brees and that Saints offense, a little more prolific when you talk about it, but Christian McCaffrey's in a fine spot. Cam Newton's in a fine spot. It's $6,100. It's the second cheapest price that we've seen Cam. Cam's one of the safest DFS plays. He has one of the safest floors. He's got an average of 8 attempts. Now, is he going to run a ton on this defense? Probably not. Both of these defenses, too, I mentioned, they are, I think, top 10 in terms of allowing the other offense to run the least amount of plays. So this is a slow-moving game potentially. So the narrative, again, of him being a high-priced guy, or 61, he's going to return a lot of value. I just like his safe floor in cash games as opposed to someone like Kirk Cousins, who's really expensive. And we've seen both sides of Kirk Cousins. Russell Wilson's another one, too, that's a little bit below him. that we've seen both sides, and we've seen him only throw 20 times and have 13 completions. So with Cam, that safe floor, that price tag for me, too cheap.
Okay, all right, I like it. Now let's look at Zeke Elliott. He's down $1,300. He's only 7,000.
That's because he's facing who?
He's facing the Jaguars now, but it's in Dallas. So is that drop justified, Reed?
I think so. I mean, yeah, you're right. He's going up against the Jags defense. And so on paper, you're going to say, yeah, I mean, the Jags defense is really good, but they're not necessarily as good against the run as they are against the pass. And so, again, a GPP play for me, absolutely. If I can get Zeke around that 7K price tag, I'm going to be all over that in GPPs because he's the only guy. He's seen 8 and 9% of the snaps. We see him have a safe floor in terms of his attempts. And the Jags, again, are really good at stopping the pass. They're really good at funneling that to the middle. And Zeke is a guy that, again, is the only person in that offense that has any sort of value. So if you're playing on that alone and not worried about the Jags pass or the Jags rush defense, 6th worst for opposing, so not the worst in terms of opposing running backs, I'm fine with that play. And if I can get him at that price tag, sure, I'm in.
All right, Jeff, does the price outweigh the matchup?
Yeah, I'm surprised he went down this much. I mean, the matchup isn't great, but it's not that bad either. I mean, Kareem Hunt, 87 yards and a touchdown last week. You know, Saquon Barkley put up 100 yards in week 1. And this is a home game for Dallas. Again, it just really comes down to the player and the situation. I mean, Zeke Elliott's on pace for 70 receptions this year. That's a career high by a ton. Almost on pace for almost 100 targets. He's getting involved, not just as a runner. He's on the field all the time, but he's not just getting carries anymore. He's legitimately one of their, if not going to be their top targeted receiver for the year at this point. So you have to factor all that in. He's basically game flow independent right now. I mean, he's going to get involved in the offense regardless of what happens. So if he does break a big play or if they get rolling and he gets a goal line touchdown too, I mean, there's no reason why he can't go off in the spot. So I think you almost have to kind of take advantage of this. You just don't have that many running backs to get as many snaps as Zeke.
Yeah, it's true. And really, there's legitimately nobody else in Dallas that can really help out that offense. It just...
Jeff Swaim.
I mean, well, like...
tells his name with the G.
I mean, are we really ignoring Alan Hearns here?
Yes.
Yes, fair enough. Let's go to a wide receiver, though.
I was going to say, let's not ignore this wide receiver. Julio Jones, he's down $600. He's $7,900. The Falcons, we talked about this matchup. They're facing the Bucs in Atlanta. Do you agree with that price tag, Reed?
Yeah, it made Emerson cry a little bit there. She just teared up a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Julio Jones is one of the top-ranked guys in that offense, right? And you go up against Tampa Bay, they're the second worst in terms, or the second best for opposing running or opposing receivers, and just a bad pass defense overall. In terms of career touchdowns, Julio has the most going against Tampa Bay at 10. We've seen him torch him for 12 receptions, 232 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He runs a ton of routes inside the 20s. When you look at Julio, yes, he doesn't have a touchdown. Yes, that's sort of his thing, and he's not going to potentially get a touchdown. He's going to get a couple, I think, in my estimation, against this bad Tampa Bay defense. So absolutely, he should be the second highest guy, but Thielen and Brown obviously are guys that are playing extremely well, so you can't put him up there. I'd honestly switch him with Evans in terms of price tag. So for me personally, love the price. The price tag, though, is too cheap.
Jeffrey, would you like to react to that?
I don't know what else to say. It is too cheap. I mean, you're looking at this slate and you look at Julio Jones and what he's done. I mean, this price is kind of a reaction to Julio not scoring this year, right? Because if he had any coming off a good performance, he'd probably be like 8,500. So not only are you getting him in the best matchup, a historically good matchup where Reed said, he's basically torched Tampa Bay throughout his career. Now you're getting him at a reduced price too. So I don't know. I mean, I guess from a turnover perspective, you kind of have to look at this and say, well, everyone's going to be on him, and they probably will for good reason. Maybe he becomes a fade candidate for that, but this is a tough one to fade. This is if you don't have Julio Jones on your roster this week, you're gonna be real nervous watching this game because he's not too expensive for this matchup, and Tampa's legitimately awful. So,
guys, our producer Steph says we have about a minute left. I trust her, so we have a minute left. Real quick though, make it quick. Antonio Brown, $8,700. You like that price tag against Cincy?
It's about right for me. I mean, he hasn't done well against the Bengals over his career, so you could even say maybe it's a touch too high, but he's coming off a good game. A guy I'm not going to jump over hoops to get exposure to, but a decent tournament play.
Reed, please answer.
Yep, 13 targets average. I mean, the last time he went up against Cincy, 8 receptions, 101 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, this guy's seeing double-digit targets all the time. So, again, Jeff says right. You're not going to jump through hoops, but I think it's a fine play.
That is
Seems
a
about
show.
the perfect price, to be honest.
Perfect price.
That's a show. We got through everything. We're at the end.
Boom.
Thanks, guys.
Love it.
Appreciate it. I had a good time with you, man.
Hey,
good
love
first
it.
show hosting together.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Bring it in.
Later,
Bring
guys.
it in, guys.
Have a good one.
Anyway, Jeff.